Stop writing music. And I mean all music, classical, pop, jazz, just stop. Now, this isn't my idea. I've seen people say this quite seriously in YouTube comments, including on my channel. And yes, it can sound completely unhinged, like someone who just discovered silence and thought that was the future of music. But let's slow down and take this idea seriously for a second. Has everything worth writing, every song, every symphony already been written? Has every style, every musical possibility already been explored? Or is that just musical grumpiness dressed up as wisdom? Let's play along for a minute, because annoyingly, some of this isn't as crazy as it sounds. With pop and rock, the argument is usually pretty blunt. Anything that's worth listening to was already done in the 1970s. Everything since then has been some form of imitation. New songs are accused of recycling the same melodies, structures, chords. It's the same stuff with new clothes on. Modern pop and rock in particular gets criticized for being overproduced, algorithm-friendly, auto-tuned, and over-technologized, including now AI. Compared to the older stuff from the 1960s and 70s, modern rock and pop can be thought of a little bit like microwave food compared to good home cooking. And whether or not you agree with that sentiment, it does resonate with a lot of people. From there, the argument usually moves to classical music, and it doesn't get any kinder. Modern classical music, especially non-tonal and highly chromatic music, think Stockhausen or Schoenberg, is sometimes criticized as being overly intellectualized and unappealing. For many listeners, it sounds like music that's very impressive but just meant to be analyzed. Push further into the avant-garde, and people say this isn't even music anymore. Take John Cage, for example. His prepared piano music, or indeed his 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence, pushes people to the point where they say, okay, we're done here. From this perspective, modern music really can drive listeners away, or can even be accused of abandoning the basic idea of music itself. But tonal classical music doesn't escape this criticism either. According to this view, tonal music had already been pushed as far as it could go by the late 19th, early 20th century. And everything since then that says it's tonal music is either copying or just pretending it isn't. Even composers who turned back to tonality in the 20th century, the neo-romantics like Barber or some of Copland's music, are accused of being romantic a few decades too late. And the composers in the late 19th, early 20th century who tried to reinvent tonality, the Impressionists like Debussy and Ravel, well, they were done over 100 years ago. So the conclusion for classical music is pretty bleak as well. Everything that's been good has already been written, and everything that's left over is academic or nostalgic. And then there's what might be the strongest argument of them all, which is you probably haven't even heard most of the type of music that you like. Everybody knows Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, maybe a little bit of the Ninth Symphony. But what about the other symphonies? Or what about the 32 piano sonatas? What about the string quartets? How many people have heard even a little bit of those? And how about Vivaldi, who wrote over 100 violin concertos, and Haydn, who wrote over 100 symphonies? How many of those have you heard? I, as a professional musician, haven't even heard all of them. And so the same thing happens with pop music. For example, people who say, I love the Beatles, I know all of their songs, actually may not have heard even half of them and get surprised by new songs, sometimes very pleasantly. So that's when the question pops up again. Why demand new music when there's so much of the existing music you haven't even explored? So to be fair, the people who say just stop writing new music, they have a point. Yes, today's music, pop, rock, and classical, a lot of it is derivative. And sure, probably a lot of it doesn't need to exist, and you've probably only heard 5 to 10% of it. But here's the thing. If you're willing to work through the noise, you're probably going to find something new, something genuinely worth listening to. You might find something that's moving, something you didn't expect to love. That's always been the case. You see, with very few exceptions, composers and songwriters have always had to write a lot of stuff before they get to the music that's really great. And a lot of them will freely admit that. Not everything they wrote was meant to be immortal. Some of it was written just to clear the path. And that's still true now. New music, even when it's based on old ideas, will always be a little bit different and sometimes very different. It comes from different people, different lives, and different experiences. So maybe the burden to be original is higher today. Maybe it's harder to surprise people, attract them to your music, but it's not impossible. So should people really stop writing new music? Should we just shut it all down and agree that history has peaked? Well, I don't think so, but I'm really curious to see what you think. Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you really want to support the channel, become a member. You'd be surprised how much that helps me to create content like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.